Most people worry about the fact that illnesses are set in their genes. Well, actually, while genes have some relevance, there's something called epigenetics, the thing that sits on top of genes, that really will control the outcome of your destiny. What I'm going to do today is help you learn all about epigenetics. Now I want to move on to today's second subject, which is about genes versus epigenetics, and just explain a little bit about the two. But before we get going, here's some very wise words from Dr. David Unwin.
It's clear to me that it can't be genetic. You can't have a genetic change in 30 years. It's environmental. And I believe it's what people are eating. I think they're snacking, having sugary drinks, they're eating cakes, chocolates, energy bars, all sorts of stuff. And they're sick, they're ill, they don't look well, and they're not well. And I really worry that when my generation of older doctors has died out, nobody will remember that there was a world without diabetes. As a young person, I didn't know anybody with diabetes. There was nobody in my family, I never met anybody, I didn't know it existed. And now, which of us can say we don't know anybody with diabetes? The world has changed. I think it's vital that we do not accept this epidemic and that we fight it before it becomes accepted, because it's a poor reality to accept. It's a dreadful prison. When I think, I have children who are too fat to run. They can't run. They're laughed at, their lives so hard. Whole families imprisoned with obesity. Obesity, it's not a lifestyle choice. They don't choose to be heavy. It's horrible for them. But we live in an obesogenic environment. We're surrounded by snacks. We're surrounded by the idea that we should treat ourselves and we should eat this and buy this just a snack. I think many of us are addicted to carbs and we cannot manage moderation. And that's one of the main reasons I face an epidemic of obesity, but it's a cruel epidemic and it should be fought.
Dr. Mark Hyman provides a great analogy in the foreword of a book called Hashimoto's Protocol. He says, "Genes are not your destiny. This is something I truly believe in. I tell my patients that genetics loads the gun, but it's the environment that pulls the trigger. The way you eat, how much exercise, how you manage stress, and your exposure to environmental toxins all contribute to the formation and progression of chronic disease." Another way to think of it is to use a poker analogy. Our genes deal our hand, but it's how we play our cards that define our outcomes. I think that just sums it up absolutely brilliantly. If ill health runs in your family and you're of the mindset that it's futile looking after yourself because, you're doomed anyway, then it's not like that at all. In fact, go and check out a website called www.epigenetics.com. Now, the word epi is Greek for over or on top of, and of course genetics is genetics, which relates to something that we inherit, something transmitted from one generation to the other. Now, those who study epigenetics, and I've invested in a company that looks into genes and epigenetics, so I'm really passionate about this area. But when you study epigenetics, you start to realize that it's not so much about what we inherited, more about what we induce. I believe we have far more control over our outcome than we realize. And it's worth remembering that the diseases that you and I probably fear the most, the Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, they're all fairly modern illnesses, aren't they? Just a century ago, they virtually didn't exist. Now, 3 of my 4 grandparents, plus my wonderful Auntie Avis, they all died sadly from cancer. But several decades ago when they passed away, they weren't fully aware of what was causing all these diseases. Now, on paper it might look like I'm doomed with cancer, losing so many relatives. But I don't think that's the case. I believe that genes have very little influence over modern diseases. Sure, they might govern the colour of your eyes, colour of your hair, how tall you are, but are they really responsible for passing on diseases? Diseases that have only really been established since we've changed our way of life? No, I don't get that or buy that at all. I like the analogy we had earlier on. Your genetics, your genes, it's just like you've got a loaded gun, but it is your lifestyle, your epigenetics, it's what you eat and the way you behave and things that you do that is needed to pull the trigger. So if you found epigenetics interesting, let me now say though that genes do play an important in certain areas. If you want to find out what those few areas are, click the link right here.